Hey everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we're joined by Miguel Valdez of Valdez Strength and Performance. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast. If you like what you're seeing and you want to see more athletes, coaches, and special guests, make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll be able to share a lot more content moving forward. We are powered by Spirit Leaf Waterdown, located at 64 Hamilton Street in Waterdown, Ontario. If you're looking for Canada's top cannabis stop, look no further than Alex and his team at Spirit Leaf Waterdown. With his knowledgeable staff, you're going to be able to find all the THC and CBD products of the highest of quality. Online curbside pickup is available, and don't forget to like our Instagram and their Instagram, and you'll be able to save some money. We're also sponsored by Project XGuard. Project XGuard is an amazing program that helps underprivileged youth get connected with jiu-jitsu throughout the GTA. If you know anybody who would benefit from the gifts of jiu-jitsu in their life, and make sure you contact us or Project XGuard and help them get started with amazing instructors. Thanks everybody for watching, and enjoy the show.
Special edition of the podcast. We are gathered today with Miguel Valdez from your training site. I caught wind of your training site more on watching there's a couple of gentlemen that it just showed me your Instagram, and I was super jacked up and saw it, but I also realized you were training with David Mosley, you're a BJJ guy, and I was like, oh, we've got to bring this guy on to have a discussion about training, because Michael, myself, and you, by trade, we're all fitness professionals. So I was like, we got to bring somebody in, but really talks about powerlifting, a lot of different concepts of training, so we could get a really good discussion. So welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Aaron, how does it feel to talk to somebody who actually lifts, unlike us?
God, you know what? I was telling Miguel before, when it comes to BJJ training, obviously a lot of people haven't been doing a lot of training necessarily, depending on where you're at or what your situation is. But a lot of people, if they have the capability, they've been doing a lot more strength training. But Miguel, you have a pretty sick setup in is it your garage that you're set up in, or is that your studio? Or
yeah, it's a garage that I got everything set up in now.
Excellent. So this is your main training space now, and that's what you've been utilizing?
Yeah, so basically before the whole pandemic, I was just renting out of a space still in Brampton, but I was just renting out a space there. And then I trained out of Loose Strength's gym as well. And then I guess as things happen, obviously that gym didn't exist, couldn't train any people anymore. So started just gathering some equipment over the pandemic, basically more so in the summer months, and just kept them buying equipment and just kind of got a full setup going after that.
Very nice. So how did you even get really more? Did you start off with BJJ and then go into strength training, or was it more you started as a fitness professional and kind of built off that?
Oh yeah. So basically I started off in powerlifting. That was my main strength training background. I competed a little bit too with that. But yeah, basically from there got into, I didn't really know where else to take my, I guess more so my fitness goals or whatever I want to do. BJJ has always been something that I wanted to try out. So I got into it pretty late. But yeah, I gave it a try out of a local MMA gym. And basically I was 200 pounds, felt pretty strong. And I just got wrecked by this 140 pound, 16-year-old kid. And I was just yeah, this is definitely something I need to start learning. And then just kind of went from there.
That's usually how it goes. I started strength training in high school, and then going into university, and then my first jiu-jitsu class, I think I got triangled by a female who was about a quarter of my size. so I was like, okay, well, this stuff obviously works. So this UFC stuff clearly works.
this UFC training.
UFC training. So tell us a little bit about just your strength training background. How did you actually get interested in strength training initially? What was kind of your first memories of that? And then I think you mentioned you started up Brampton Barbell Club at one point. Touch on that a little bit and kind of the history there.
Yeah. So basically, I just got into lifting when I was in high school. Started off end of high school. It was just typical. Was super skinny. Probably wasn't even 120 pounds by the end of by the start of grade 12. So I started lifting weights more so for just gaining size or whatever else. As I was doing that, realized that progressive overload and lifting heavier or trying to lift heavier was probably the best way to add on muscle. And that's when I got into like more like powerlifting based programming. And then from there, like just got lucky to meet a bunch of like friends at the gym that were actually in powerlifting, like already have competed and whatever else. So they kind of took me through the ropes, like taught me everything that I initially needed to know, and then started competing after that. And that's where basically Brampton Barbell started. So it was just a group of guys that just all happened to like powerlifting. And we wanted to start competing together and realized that if we start a club and stuff, we can compete under our club name. So we didn't even have a physical space. We literally just lifted out of a Good Life, just trained together. And we just got lucky that like typical Good Life, like even bringing chalk, you get like pretty much banned from the gym. You get shunned from the gym, right? So we got lucky that like the managers there, that all the trainers there are actually into powerlifting as well. So we all like train together like pretty frequently and stuff. And yeah, that's where that Brampton Barbell Club started, and that's where that powerlifting competition started as well. We're competing. Yeah.
Shout out Good Life Fitness.
Yeah, shout out to Good Life.
Shout out Good Life Fitness. Shout out Planet Fitness, where the lunk alarm is always on.
Yeah, but yeah, no, that was like pretty much it. And then from there, like I kind of just like took it on, like I after competing a couple times, so I specialized in like bench pressing. So for the CPF, I got like the junior record for like the 165-pound class for the bench press. And then after that, like I didn't really know where else I wanted to go. I wanted to compete again, but I kind of like lost like the drive to keep powerlifting specifically. And that's where I started like experimenting with all like other kind of like strength training methods and whatever else. Started trying to learn up more on that. And then that's when I started competing or started training jiu-jitsu. And then later, like started trying to be competitive with jiu-jitsu. But yeah, that's basically how I kind of rolled into that.
When you look at kind of like all the kind of like different methodologies as far as like training goes, and when you look at like powerlifting specifically, do you find like if there's a method that's really kind of like supreme above others, or is it kind of segmented into certain types, like let's say Westside Barbell, like they kind of have the best kind of set for powerlifting and strength building? Or do you feel there's just other concepts that are kind of out there that are far more superior?
For like powerlifting specifically, or just like for anyone
Sure.
that's looking?
I think I'll look at both, because I mean, like for powerlifting, yes, we already know kind of what they have, but they also do service the general public as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like honestly, like the main thing above everything, and like this goes for just anyone that's trying to be, even just trying to get fit in general, is just to pick something that like you can stay consistent with. So like I know like a lot, like I think like every program can work for sure. Like I know guys that got so strong just doing their own thing, not really even knowing what they're really doing, or like they do proper things, but they didn't really look to a specific method to getting to that strength level. But they were consistent. So I think for the most part, something that you can stay consistent with is going to be by far the best thing out there. So a lot of people I know, like they start a program or start a methodology, and then they just jump ship right away the moment they get bored, or like they're not really seeing the results they wanted to out of it or whatever. So something you can stay consistent with, and something that you can stay fairly injury free from as well. So I would say like just those two things for sure would be the main thing. And then for other sports, like out of powerlifting, something that like you can honestly say where your level is at. So I know a lot of like people, like when they want to get strong for jiu-jitsu, either they talk to me or wherever else, they talk about how to increase their squat, how to increase their bench or whatever else. But like not really realizing like those barbell movements are specific for powerlifting. Like that's a sport itself. And jiu-jitsu wise, like you want to get stronger, but the number on the barbell doesn't necessarily mean you're getting it. Like that's the strength that you need specifically for jiu-jitsu or any other sport in general. So yeah, like I'd say like I like Westside for myself specifically too, because I'm not powerlifting specific anymore, because I couldn't really deal with, like when people think of powerlifting, they think maximum weights all the time. Like usually that's what the first thought is. They got to lift super heavy, but a lot of it's actually just sub-maximal work, almost kind of how jiu-jitsu is, just drilling, like constantly drilling, getting the technique right, whatever else. Powerlifting too, you lift like pretty much like below 90% for a good portion of time until you compete. So it can be pretty boring if that's not the sport you really want to be in. So for myself, I like Westside because you can always switch up the exercises. You can lift pretty heavy on the days that it's given to lift heavy. And then, yeah, it just adds a lot of variation to the programming.
Why do you think West Side, like Louis Simmons is like a legend in like the powerlifting community, but like why do you think that method is just so successful, and why are those guys so dominant? And why, and then also like, I guess, I think a lot of that method, like there's a lot of ties into like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think you mentioned that when you were talking as well.
I think like one, like Louis Simmons, like he like brought a lot of like that powerlifting culture to like a lot of like powerlifting culture to like our area of things. So like, or where we're around. Like when you think powerlifting, like that's usually the first person you think about, because of like how big the numbers were when like he was training people, or even still training people, of course. But like when like they came to the scene, they were throwing on probably like the biggest numbers out there. And that's also when like a lot of geared lifting came into play, like wearing suits and whatever else. And I think he just really honed in and like really like found a really good method for that specific part of powerlifting to get guys really strong. I think also like just in general, when you're looking at videos, like you see a guy throwing on like 1,000 pounds on the squatting to a box, having chains and all this crazy stuff, like it catches a lot of attention to it. So even like general public wise, when they like see that, they're like, oh shit, like, yeah, like these huge guys like lifting all these crazy chains or whatever else, like that's powerlifting or whatever. So I think like he really like did a good job at like kind of getting his name attached to the sport in that sense. But yeah, like a lot of his methods too, like are able to like, I find like it's probably one of the best ways to carry on to like even like MMA. Like I don't know if you guys are familiar with Phil Daru. He's like he was one of the head strength and conditioning coach. I don't know if he still is, but at AT&T he was the head strength and conditioning coach. But a lot of his methods he trains like Dustin Poirier and stuff. Follow along with like the conjugate method. He just has his own version of it. But basically that ability to kind of stay ready all the time, like with West Side or the conjugate method, you're kind of almost ready to compete at any point because you're always used to that grind of like maxing out and whatever. So I like that for combat athletes specifically, if they can lift in that way, is because if you're an amateur athlete, like you don't have a set schedule when you're going to compete. Like you could literally see like a list of tournaments and you're like, I feel like competing at that one because, right? So if you're following like a strict like periodized thing where it's like you're only doing endurance work this week, you may not even be ready for that competition in like 3 weeks, right? So like I find for athletes that are just trying to come up, build up the resume, that's probably one of the best ways to stay ready all the time in order to compete like optimally anyways.
Mm-hmm. So when you kind of look at like your training approach for like, let's say a person who comes into your doors and goes, hey, all right, I'm in somewhat shape, I want to get competition pre-ready, like what's your first kind of steps you go with this person to kind of see where you're going to go with them?
So one, like I would say one, if like they have a skills coach specifically, so if they're just like a lot of athletes that I have come in, they have like skills coach for things, whether it's boxing, jiu-jitsu, or whatever else. So first thing I try to do for sure is get in contact with that coach, see where their opinion is and what they're lacking, all that stuff. And then I also talk about injuries. So my main thing with like training people or strength training people above like even enhancing their performance is keeping them like performing. So making sure that they're not getting injured, or we can one, not getting injured, to preventing injuries in general, or trying to fix up any injuries that they may currently have. Because I think a lot of people like think like too much on the side of like enhancing their performance, getting stronger or whatever else, but not really so much fixing whatever imbalances or whatever issues they may have. Because like I find that more important, just because like you're not going to get as much strength conditioning I give you. The most important thing is that you're getting better at your skill above everything. So if you're not able to perform that skill, able to get into the gym to practice or whatever else, like it doesn't matter how much stuff we do here in the gym, like you're not going to be able to perform. So for sure, those things are top things I would look at. And then from there, just through like general assessment tools and whatever else, seeing where they may be lacking and then start trying to bring that up.
What are some like parameters you're looking for, like in a program set for like, let's say like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athlete, and what are some maybe just like some basic guidelines and recommendations you can give to somebody who's listening to this right now, who's trying to get yoked for their next jiu-jitsu competition?
One, I would say like staying away from getting married to exercises. So like I kind of mentioned before, like a lot of people are like, I want to get my squat up. I want to get my barbell squat up. I want to get my barbell bench up and stuff. Not getting married to those exercises specifically, but more so focusing on like the movement pattern that comes with those exercises. So for example, like the ones I would look at are like a squat pattern, a hinge, some sort of lunge, push, pull, and then following exercises within those categories that meet your like, or that would follow your current like ability to perform it. So for example, if you can't barbell squat because say jiu-jitsu, you just have bad knees, bad hips, like super, or bad back, super common areas that like people have, or super common issues people have. I would try to regress that movement and try to figure out something that you can perform consistently without getting hurt. And then once you get better, make it a more complex or difficult movement. So one easy one is just like a goblet squat, like super simple, can get that squat going really easily. Say for now, you get really strong in the goblet squat. And we want to take it further, then I would say, okay, let's throw on a landmine now. Landmine squat. We can load that a lot heavier, load that a lot more easier, and then kind of progress it from there, depending on what level you're at. So I think as long as you're doing some sort of squat, it's fine. And then as long as it's not getting you hurt, or we're still able to get stronger at it without getting hurt, then I think that's the main focus that I would say for a training program anyways.
When you kind of like hear the terms, like whether, people have terminology for everything. It's like MMA style training or HIIT training, and then you just go into straight hypertrophy based training and whatever, right? Like, what do you kind of like look at as like, okay, if you wanted to kind of round stuff into like a general form of what people should be doing, how would you specify it? How would you kind of break it down?
So what do you mean? Like how would I kind of like categorize it? Or?
Yeah, because like people are going, oh, well, I need to do HIIT training to lose fat, or I need to do strength training to lose fat, or I need to go do a bunch of cardiovascular training or whatever, right? So like everybody's kind of has their own opinion as far as like how they should train to lose weight or get better performance or whatever, right? So let's just take the typical average individual wants to lose weight, gain muscle. Mm-hmm. What do you think kind of your methodology, or should people be sticking to get those types of results they're looking for?
So for sure, like mine's like I really hone in on the consistency factor, because one, that's like my biggest issue in general too, is like I try to like take on way too many things. Like I know this works, I know that works, I'm going to do all these things, and then next week I don't do any of it, and just end up like being like, okay, I'll start it next week, or I'll get on that next week. So I would say that for most part, one, kind of doing it sounds like kind of like away from what most fitness people or whatever want to say is the best way to do it, but finding like the least amount of work that you need to do in order to see results. So if you're just starting out, like you have not done anything whatsoever, you're like a brand new fresh plate, like I'd say just start lifting. I don't even care what you lift or what you do in your like for that routine, like just get into the habit of starting to lift. Maybe that's 3 days a week for you, and that's what you can do. Then do 3 days a week. And then the moment you're ready, we take on something a little bit more specific. So now let's get like an actual training program going. Let's like increase it from 3 days to 4 days a week, stuff like that, before even looking at diet and all those other things. And then once the person's ready, say they have like a solid training program, they're going 3-4 days a week. They want to start looking at diet. First thing would be like, okay, how much water are you drinking? They're not drinking enough water. Okay, increase the amount of water you're drinking. You're not sleeping enough. Okay, try checking out how much sleep you can get. And then kind of just progressing it up from there, building kind of like those skills. And then from there, you should be able to have like a pretty solid routine going or a solid routine going that you can keep consistently with. And then from there, you can get more specific if you want to. But I think a lot of people just generally like any strength program like would be pretty solid as a general public kind of like we'll look at like starting strength or any of those things. And then diet wise, for the most part, like you don't even have, like, I know a lot of people like to count macros or get into super specifics of things. But even just like eating more whole foods, maybe not, you delete Uber Eats off your phone and you're just cooking for the most part. You learn how to cook and try doing that for the most part. And then from there, if you're not seeing any more results, then get more specific little by little.
I have kind of like my own opinion on this, but like you've trained with you've trained a lot of athletes. You've also trained like a lot of just regular people as well. Do you find there's like a significant difference like in your programming when it comes to like just training the average Joe or training like a professional MMA fighter? Or if there are differences, like what do you find they are mainly?
Honestly, man, like I think a lot of the training is pretty similar. Like this is like between females and guys. Like I don't find there's any like real differences in whatever and like how you train them. Like the same principles pretty much apply for the most part. Even with professional athletes or whatever, anyone that's competitive, we pretty much train like fairly similar. It's not until like say there's a specific goal that's being met, that's when things change up. So for example, like say there's a competition coming up, now we need to like kind of like taper and kind of like build towards that. Then that's when things get a little bit more specific towards that. But for the most part, like I like to train everyone with that same principle of training within a movement pattern and figuring out where that person may be. So like the average Joe may be even lifting more or like doing more like complex exercises than the professional athlete that I have competing in like boxing or whatever. Like just because you're a professional athlete in boxing doesn't mean you have to do anything crazier than someone that's like just starting to lift or like that's just like lifting for the recreational aspect of it. But yeah, and then like in terms of like maybe like certain exercise selection, picking things that are a little bit more specific for your sport. But other than that, man, like I can train guys pretty similarly and see pretty good results. Again, like it's gonna be more so like the skills aspect, in my opinion, anyways. That's gonna get them better above everything else.
Yeah, honestly, I agree. I think it's the skills, and I think you basically touched on it. Like in general, the same rules apply. Like a squat is a squat, a push is a push, a pull is a pull, a hinge is a hinge, and unless there's something specific that like maybe like a professional athlete needs to work on, like they need to cut weight or they need to, develop a certain very specific skill set for their sport. The same, principles apply across the board.
Yeah, for sure. And like honestly, even in terms of training, like schedule wise too, like that's why like right now I've have like my guys, like if you've been just from seeing videos and whatever, I've like a lot of guys lifting a lot more now, but just because there's barely any training to do for skill stuff. Like if like you're only able to like if you only have 2 days a week right now that you can get hold of people to train whatever sport you're at, then we might as well use up the other days to lift more and like maybe pick up on other things that we won't have time for. Because generally when it is like competition time or even like just in general, we could have a regular training schedule. Like I only like to see my guys like maybe twice a week. Like you don't need to in my opinion, you don't need to see me more than 2, maybe 3 times a week at the gym lifting. If you're already training like jiu-jitsu, boxing, whatever, like 5 days a week or whatever, like there's no need to like, in my opinion, to overload your system with that. Yeah, it's pretty weird. Like I put like a very like low amount of emphasis on my part of it. Like I just want these guys to like stay healthy, like increase things that we need to if like the coach brings it up and whatever. But for the most part, man, like I just want to keep my guys healthy so they can improve their performance through their skills training. Like that's what I feel like my job is there for.
What do you kind of think about, like, especially as obviously the health and fitness industry's kind of gone through one hell of a year for sure. And you look at all these businesses and like, think about COVID. Okay. Yes. We need to have healthy, strong, able individuals to, have a healthy immune system to build off and fight viruses. And that's the whole premise of it. Right. And we've shut down gyms. And then the idea is obviously social distancing, limits the capacities on people, all that kind of jazz. And the industry itself that used to be a very vibrant, hey, let's get as many people into these gyms as possible every night where people could get fit and it creates atmospheres, and you can't have that anymore. So obviously this whole industry has changed. So it's like, where do you kind of see, and again, this is just an opinion based, right? Like, where do you see the industry going now? Whereas like, is it kind of like we get vaccines going and we go back to normal? Or is you going to see more of these boutique or small clubs like yourself kind of starting up where it's like it's more individual based and people taking more responsibility for their own stuff?
Yeah, honestly, man, like in terms of like where industry changes, like even like for myself for coaching wise, like without the ability to have people in person for the most part, or even access to a bunch of equipment, it really like it really got you thinking of like how much do you actually like know as a coach, and how well can you coach someone. Like I feel like a lot of like creativity came out of it, which is like a solid thing, and like a lot of like in terms of like, okay, we want this sort of adaptation to occur, so whether it's fat loss, like muscle gain or strength gain or whatever, how can we do that without having this entire plethora of like of equipment that we have access to. So I think like for a lot of like individuals, like a lot of good coaches kind of like shot up. Like they became a lot more noticeable because they were able to still like produce results and progress without like the like whatever X amount of equipment that they normally would have had access to. So I think like a lot of good came out of that in terms of like coaching wise. And it gave like a lot of opportunity for other coaches to come up and like kind of show like that they do know what they're talking about, because they can get results and you only need a kettlebell. You don't need anything super crazy out of it. But as an industry, like for sure, it's like been super hard with that. I think it's just like, again, just a lot of creativity and a lot of like looking, like for myself, like for my own training, I started doing a lot of things that I neglected when I did have access to everything or whatever else. So I learned a lot of that from myself too, like just like learning how to use a kettlebell properly. I always use kettlebell just pretty much for like swings or whatever, and like anything like too intense. But having to understand like all the exercises that could probably come out of a kettlebell just so I could train a client. So I think a lot of learning did come out of it, and a lot of like good came out of it in that sense. But in terms of like gyms and stuff, I see a lot of for sure private gyms coming up. Taking on like people in that sense, just because like the time slots or whatever you've seen like at Good Life or big box gyms having the time slots come into play. So I think like for that, like a lot of gyms have the opportunity, maybe after things die down, to like kind of like come up again. Like it was like almost like a reset, I think, on like the industry.
I think so too. I think there's definitely going to be a lot more smaller boutique gyms coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And you might even see that looking into like kind of like tying into like the BJJ side as well, where, I don't know, maybe not, there's might not be some people that are very comfortable going to a gym with 50 people rolling on top of each other after all this. And
yeah, man,
there may
BJJ for sure probably took the biggest hit off it. It's like the most COVID like friendly sport you can get into, man. Holy, yeah, fuck.
Everybody's trying to like, avoid COVID when they're training jiu-jitsu, avoiding herpes when they're training jiu-jitsu. You name the disease, I don't know, like especially like, I mean, look at like rolling with Aaron, like you don't know what you're gonna catch. I just see shaking his head over there.
So that was...
but yeah, but getting back to like a very important point is the industry's changing, so there's a lot more like people going online, going virtual. And then with jiu-jitsu, you see there's a lot more content online and people are going virtual there and they're offering coaching there. Is that kind of still going to be like in the future? Like there's going to be a combination of boutique gyms, more stuff going online. Like where do you see the industry going BJJ wise, and like the fitness industry itself going in the next like 3 to 5 years after this is over?
Yeah, I think honestly, man, like everyone already, like anyone that was like really big, that like already maxed out in person was like, I saw like already starting to do things online, take advantage of that platform. So like even for like jiu-jitsu wise, like guys like Keenan, like starting Keenan online or whatever, like that's where like he was headed out to. But like I think a lot of people now are forced to go into that direction. And honestly speaking, like if this thing didn't happen, I think it would have headed there anyways. Like that's probably probably where things would have had to been in order to like one, like just in general to expand your business. Like you can't like leave out like an entire platform and only focus on in person. Like there more than likely would have had to been a time for like these online things to happen. So yeah, I think people that were already getting started with that like flourished because they're like, I was already on this, so I'm just keep going with what I was doing. And then a lot of people struggled where they were super comfortable with all the in-person training that they were doing, that they kind of were like now forced to kind of like ditch that and now learn all these things, like with one using social media to to really expand their business, to getting used to how online platforms work, for training people in general or running these classes or whatever else.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this. So like, let's just say you were like taking on like an apprentice or something like that. Like what's the first thing you're going to teach this individual and like how to be successful as a coach? Because now you're training the trainer.
So like they're already been training people, or they're just like,
yeah, let's just say they're like they've run into this whole thing where like they were in person training, they were mildly successful, but now they obviously want to change the way they're doing their business. And how would you help them step their businesses up?
Basically, Aaron's question is he wants to be your apprentice. How do
I'm good, man.
One, for sure, like creating that online presence. So for myself, like this is just all things that I've seen like myself do well with, and like just from other individuals I keep in contact that do really well because of this aspect, is like, yeah, for sure, an online presence of some sort. It doesn't have to be Instagram. Instagram just so happens to be right now like the most popular platform, in my opinion, or most accessible. Obviously, YouTube and whatever else is great too. But for sure, it's creating some sort of online presence and getting yourself out there. It's like the easiest form of like advertisement you could probably get, and it's free. Like as long as you again consistent with it and keep going with it, and putting out some decent content, like I'm sure like eventually it'll pick up, and that's what's going to help out a lot. So that for sure is the online presence. Two, with that, networking, through Instagram, I've met a ton of people that like I wouldn't have met like at all, like for sure, like would never have met just because they're from different parts of the world or wherever else, and literally found me through Instagram. And that's what, like, even that's one thing that I liked from BJJ too. It was literally like a community of people that had a bunch of other things that they did, and just so happened that we shared this thing of BJJ. But like again, networking through them, like you get a lot of opportunity through that. So I would say for sure that online presence is key. Two, like constantly reading, constantly reading up on things, like not being super close-minded to maybe one thing that you think works, and maybe opening yourself up to a bunch of other things that you could possibly learn from. So like for me, like I was into powerlifting a lot, but because like if I wanted to expand my audience to as many people as possible, I had to do things that I didn't like running. Like I hate running. But I had to like kind of like get read up on like how to increase speed, how to maybe increase endurance or whatever else. Because that's some people's goals too. Like it's not all about my goals. It's about like what other people's goals are. So getting into that. So constantly reading and learning, I think, is a key thing to do. And yeah, like those are like the top two main things for sure, that, or including networking, those three things I would say for sure would be like number one on my list to get going with. And then, yeah, like with the reading, just constantly making yourself better. Like I find that people like to see that you're investing into yourself one way or another. So for myself, that was one, showing people that I am purchasing a bunch of equipment because I want to help your training go up too. So a lot of my money that you're giving me, I'm giving back to you by getting more equipment. I'm invested in whatever goals you have. So I want to do that. And then two, like investing into more courses or whatever else. Like again, you guys are giving me money so that I can get better to make your training better. So doing a bunch of courses, reading up on stuff. It doesn't even have to be a course that you have to pay for. It could even be free courses just to learn. And then, yeah, like networking with like more professionals. So guys that I like to work, I always started talking to a lot was like loose strength therapy. He taught me a lot about rehab, prehab work and whatever else. So that's how I learned, in order to like kind of like, and I brought that into my clientele. Guys like Pierre's Elite Performance, he comes from more like a team sport background or whatever else, but working with him, learning from him, I can increase like how my training principles are. So I like to like kind of blend everything together. That's like my style of training with things, is like blending things together that I learned from other people that are better than me at those things.
Like, especially like I want to kind of touch on Instagram because obviously like there's so many different fitness professionals and fitness influencers out there. Like how how would you kind of like tell people? I mean, like the three of us are smart enough to kind of see what's bullshit and what's not, but there's a lot of like stuff out there where people are like, it's bullshit, but it's a good content. They have a good page, good music, and people see it and they're like, hey, this looks great. It's going to work for me. So how do you kind of recommend to people like, hey, man, this is kind of a bullshit concept? Like, and how do you kind of have those conversations with people?
It's definitely a hard one to get, I guess, like to kind of like show someone. I get like, but honestly, like I would say the most important thing, like, or easiest way for me is like, if it's someone that I personally know, send them pages that I like to look at, and then maybe like get them, like tell them to kind of just like in general just educate yourself and read up on stuff, and then I think that will kind of show that itself will show you like what's not, like I guess, like what's not right, or like, yeah, what's bullshit out there. Just because like I think when things like there's a bunch of like ones that definitely came up now because of like how Instagram kind of popped off for like fitness. If it looks crazy, like complex, or if it looks super cool, for the most part, it's probably not working. It's like probably not doing it.
Whoa, hold on. You're saying squatting on a Bosu ball doesn't work?
Yeah. Like if you're like, yo, that looks so cool, like that's crazy, that's more than likely isn't like an exercise that you're probably gonna be doing, like, or should be doing anyways. Like it's funny and it sucks because like a lot of the most boring things are just the shit that works, but it doesn't get the clout that like other things
squats, deadlifts, push-ups,
yeah.
pull-ups.
Yeah, literally.
But then there will be like an Instagram video of a guy doing it with like a finger going up and like twirling over the bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always look insanely weak going on Instagram. If I ever want to feel terrible, I'm like, all right, I got a PR on my deadlift, and then I go online and I see like a 15-year-old Chinese girl who like is repping my max. I'm like, how the hell is this possible?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that the biggest investment for sure is bumper plates for that. Like, and no one can tell. No one can tell where you're lifting. Like, you don't even have to write down what it is. Just have them.
Those plates are so big. Oh, it's only deadlifting
plates, man.
2.5.
Yeah, like honestly, like for the most part, just like I would say for someone like, yo, think about what your goal is, and then from there, kind of like branch off to see what would complement that goal for the most part. So if you want to get stronger, like more than likely, the Bosu ball squat is not going to be on that list of things for you to do to get stronger.
All right, Aaron, you're going to have to take that out of your program.
Take it out of my programming. I'll take it out. Another thing I wanted to ask about Instagram. So on your Instagram page, you got a rock like impersonation video. Like, where did that idea come from? And like, is The Rock like a superhero or to you, or like what's going on?
So I'm affiliated with Under Armour, so they sent me like stuff with like the Rock line or whatever else. So I just wanted to think of like the best way to kind of do it, and like I had a black turtleneck that I've literally never worn, and I was like, let's put this to use, call up my mom, ask my mom, like, the mom, does dad have like an old school fanny pack that I can use? We have it, perfect, all right, let's throw it on then. Yeah, so
fanny packs are making a comeback. You can't be hating.
Oh dude, I have like 3. They're just like not as cool as the one that I used in that video.
John Danaher is like a diamond belt and
fanny
pack wearing, rash guard wearing.
That is his black belt. That fanny pack is his black belt.
That is, he is one with the fanny pack.
So how did you get involved with Under Armour?
Again, it's like just literally just all social media, man. Like literally just kept on posting, kept on going with it. Like I tagged them in a few, like in the ones where I was wearing their apparel. So when I was wearing their stuff, I would tag them everywhere else. And again, I just got lucky with networking with people like that were already Under Armour affiliates. So I think like kind of just collabing with them or just kind of like staying in contact with them just kind of helped kind of get my page, like, I guess, noticed. And then I finally checked my email for once, and then saw that it was an Under Armour affiliate, like a request for it. So yeah, that's pretty much how I got started with them.
So that's what we need to do. We need to get that Under Armour sponsorship money.
Yeah.
Well, me and Aaron will make tens and tens of dollars. Tens and tens.
Dude, the compression shirts just automatically look more jacked anyways too, so I would wear them regardless.
and they add like 25 pounds to your bench.
Yeah, exactly.
So this touching back on like a couple things ago, just like ridiculous things that like in like programs. So want to ask you, what are some stories of you've had a lot of experience in the gym, a lot of powerlifting experience. You worked out in a good life. Sometimes, people are doing things that might be a little off, but like, what are some of like the craziest things or craziest workouts you've ever seen people do? Like when you've been working out at like a good life, for example, or at like any other gym?
Craziest ones. I've seen like, I don't even know, like maxing out like shrug machines, like trying to max out shrug machines, and literally like I thought they were literally just trying to hold it for the grip, but like it was literally them trying to shrug it. So I was like, oh, this guy's just holding, like testing his grip out. And then I saw like a little bit of like just a little bit of this going on, and then he dropped the weight, walked around like nose about to start bleeding, super sweaty, and it's like, yeah, that was a good set. Like shit like that, man. Yeah, I don't even know, man. Like leg pressing, like insane amounts of weights, like but like not even quarter leg press. I don't even know how to describe it. Like again, almost like close to like that same movement of the shrug with just leg pressing, but like it was almost more of a bench than anything because the guy was
basically
so
just
hard
ego lifting the leg press. It's
oh
like,
yeah.
Bro, I leg pressed like 1,000 pounds, man. It was crazy. I moved the weight like a quarter of an inch.
Yeah. Honestly, man. Yeah, no, I can't even. I don't think about it. Yeah, I don't think I've seen anything like absurd, like completely absurd, but like for sure, just like a huge amount of like ego lifting, or else is what I've seen, or like just terrible form. Like I've seen some pretty bad deadlifts like that. Like I didn't even know a back around like that. Like like that's how bad these deadlifts were.
It's like a frightened cat trying to deadlift.
Like I think the frightened cat would be jealous of these guys. But even at the same time, like in terms of like absurd, like I've seen some guys that were so unassuming that like that lifted way more than me, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? It's like literally did not think this guy was gonna lift anything. Turn around and he's like lifting like 6 plates on the for a deadlift, and it's like proper form and everything. So
I've seen some crazy stuff. Like I've been to like powerlifting comps with a few people, and I think there was one guy who won best lifter. I forget his name, but like skinny, unassuming guy. Like I'm like 200 and okay, well, I'm not that fat. Like 200 I'm about 190 pounds, right, Aaron? Wink, wink.
Sure.
I'm on weight.
I'm on weight right now. So like, I'm a decent sized individual. Aaron's a decent sized individual. So there's a gentleman there who might have been like what's considered like a light featherweight in like jiu-jitsu, and he won best overall lifter. I think he deadlifted more than like a super heavyweight there. It was insane. Like the amount of weight that he was pulling relative to his size. Like,
no, man, it's actually crazy. Like how strong people are right now. Like when I was like in powerlifting, like it was like, that's like, I caught it at like as it was peaking up in terms of popularity, but it was the guys that were specifically for powerlifting. And then I think as the sport got more popular, like guys from other sports, like say they just finished college and then they were playing football in college, and it was like, okay, I don't want to do anything else with this, so let me just try this powerlifting thing, and then automatically just like lifting absurd numbers right off the bat. Like some of the best guys right now, I'm like, that's the thing with powerlifting, is like it's gonna be weird, is like people considering it as an actual sport to get into and it's ditching whatever football, basketball, or whatever thing that they were going to go and try and do, and like freak athletics bring it into this thing where you only have to lift a bar once. So yeah.
So in like professional powerlifting, they're testing in that though, aren't they?
There's federations that are, and there's federations that just are not.
They're not. They're YOLOing.
Oh dude, that was like the best competition. Like one of the best competitions I went to was like there's two platforms, and there was like one for like the tested guys and one for like the untested guys. It was so like, it was like, dude, like the contrast between people was absurd. Like I was just like, okay, it's like actually the funniest. Like, okay, if I want to have fun, I'm gonna watch over here. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, like literally like a crazy, like you could have some federations that are testing. It's crazy because that one is actually getting stronger in the sense of, and I think again, it's because of athletes getting into the sport, like from other backgrounds. Like they're pushing out like crazy numbers that are like even like comparing, if not more, than the guys that aren't tested. So like that sport is like getting like pretty insane for that aspect. But yeah, you've seen there's some pretty purple dudes out there that lifting barbells.
Changing colors. They're just like mutant. Aaron, I wanted to ask you. So you've had a lot of experience at the gym that we do not speak of on here. I got to ask you, what are some of the craziest things you've seen there? Like either like personal trainers doing or strength coaches doing? Because you've been in all sorts of roles there. Like you've been management, you've been training.
I mean, like
group stuff. You've done everything. You've done it all.
Yeah. So like so I remember there was one. I'll talk about like a client, and then I'll talk about a trainer. I'll do the trainer one first. So there's one trainer who he was one person he was working with, and he had him on the Stairmaster. And I'm talking about like an old, like a lady in her like 50s or 60s. Or
I know who you're talking about.
On the Stairmaster,
I have another story about this person after.
They have a viper over their head, holding the viper over their head. So this lady can barely walk on a Stairmaster, let alone now she has to hold a weighted rubber viper over her head, and she is walking up the stairs.
It was like
overhead,
a 45-pound viper,
like a 40-pound rubber bar overhead at like 9-10 speed. I'm like, it's fucking insane. And I literally thought this woman was going to fall off the Stairmaster. I thought it was crazy. So that was one. And we had to actually talk to that individual. Like, you can't do that anymore. like members are asking questions. This is not good.
This is like, you're gonna kill somebody. Put the viper down.
And then one of the worst ones I saw was so it was like we had this event where it was like this try these classes basically, so you could sample these different types of classes. We had different formats of these classes, so like advanced and then kind of like beginners format, right? And we had this advanced one where it was all like instability based exercises, or like band, BOSUs, like the whole deal, right? And so it was all about like nervous system, strength and endurance, and then cardiovascular endurance, right? Like it was all about hitting all the systems. And so the first exercise the trainer tells the person to do is flip your BOSU ball over, jump onto the BOSU balls. We're going to do instability BOSU ball squats, right? So this lady jumps on the BOSU ball, can't hold her balance at all, flips off the BOSU ball, breaks her wrist. Right.
Oh my God.
Like, and I mean like broken, like bone protruding.
Oh my God.
I just happened to be there, and I'm like, got to call an ambulance at 6 o'clock in the morning for this poor lady to take her to the hospital. I'm like, oh, like it was.
Did she come back?
Yeah, she eventually came back. She never joined classes again.
She never looked at a BOSU ball the same way.
I don't blame her.
Again. Like,
probably has PTSD from like season BOSU ball.
I felt so bad for her too, because it was the first day of this event of like try all these classes for free. It doesn't cost any, so anybody could try anything. So it was this big thing, and yeah, that was the first event of the day, and somebody breaks their wrist, and I'm like, oh shit, this is gonna be a bad week.
Ah, damn it! It's only Monday.
So yeah, basically it was only Monday. And like that, so we got through that, and that was fucked. Like, but I mean, like I've seen crazy stuff. Like I've had, roided out trainers yelling at people, yelling at staff. Like I've had all sorts of stuff.
Didn't that happen with you? Like somebody was
we're not
a little extra super physiological. I guess
I'm not worried about it.
Water under the bridge. Well, the craziest thing I've seen, like just touching on just crazy shit that like trainers have done or that like you've seen clients do, but I think it might be the same gentleman that Aaron's talking about, but I don't know why, because touching back just to put everything back full circle again is if you see crazy shit on Instagram, chances are you don't really need to do it, or it's the cost to benefit ratio is probably not great. Versus like if you hammer the basics, basically as Miguel's been saying, like hitting squats, bench pressing, hitting all your movement patterns. But with that said, so this gentleman So he took a calf raise machine, and like a standing calf raise machine. So standing calf raise machine, added a Bosu ball to it for some reason. So you're standing on a Bosu ball upside down and then like bent over in like the worst position imaginable. So it's like full hip hinge, but then like the person's lower back was rounding and there was doing like a reverse, like donkey calf raises, but like that, but then like their back was basically like rounded in half. So it's like, I feel like they're going to snap their lumbar any second. Like, I think it was the only time where I had to go, okay, like, cool it. You need to do something else with this person because you're going to kill them.
There's definitely
what you're doing.
Exercises.
Put down the Bosu ball.
Yeah, I think honestly that's just what happens when, like, even in general with people, like the term like functional fitness, like that's when a lot of weird things like start happening. It's like when people start going too much towards like functional or like whatever functional fitness even means, and then start doing like a lot of weird things with different exercises because they feel like that's more, I guess, like realistic or whatever with it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting, especially going eventually back to a club with lots of people in there, and they have to like see what people have seen online, and then now they're going to try it out in the real world, and it's like, oh shit!
Just every single person at the desk just requesting a Bosu ball now.
Like, and again, like I don't. Like, I do fault people, and that's what I'm talking about. Because like they see this stuff, and it's like this. If it looks like a bad idea, you probably shouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Like it's just like I see stuff of like you physically can't do it. Why are you going to try it?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah. No, like yeah. If like honestly, if it takes you like 30 attempts to even do one rep of an exercise, like you probably shouldn't be continuing to try and do that exercise. Like if it looks like way too hard to do, then yeah, like that's like again like a good reason not to even bother trying to really do it. It's like I don't even know. Like with a bunch, like that's the thing. Like with Instagram, like it was good that like a lot of people were able to get onto the platform and do it, but obviously with that, like a lot of good and bad came out of it with it.
So let me ask you this, just because like obviously you're all about like hammering the basics, building off that. And when you look at like, let's say CrossFit, for example, right? And there's really good boxes that are like, hey, we're going to hammer on the basics of all these Olympic lifts and really make sure you understand movement patterns, being able to do a squat, being able to do a clean, all that kind of stuff. But then you got other boxes where going, hey, okay, this is what we're doing. See you later. Have fun. And like, what do you think about like these businesses being open and obviously they're allowing people to do this?
Yeah, honestly, like again, like especially like with like any like class setting wise, like it's definitely hard to like get like I just put it more on the coaches than anything like for it to be done. Like if like it has to be like supervised like well enough, especially for these classes where there's a big mix of people. Whether like they're experienced already or like some people literally is like their first time coming into the gym and like, getting that in, like I would say like that one would just be on the coaches, kind of like trying to look after it as best as possible, giving like those people that haven't done it before maybe a different exercise to kind of like do instead. Like again, like I don't think there's anything like really wrong with like no like I'm on the train of thought of like there's no bad exercise besides all the ones that we just talked about with the Bosu ball. There's no
such thing as a bad exercise
unless
a Bosu ball is involved.
Unless it's one of those, like there's no real bad exercise. There's just more so like what you're ready for, and there's just things that you aren't ready for, or things that you need to do or should be doing, and there's just things that aren't as much of a necessity to be throwing into the program. So yeah, like I would say like for that, like that's why I like training within movement patterns, because that's when I can get a group of people. Some guys may be able to barbell squat. Some guys may only be able to goblet squat. Some people may split squat. You're all squatting like at the same time together. It's just like the exercise that you're doing is more well suited for wherever you're at or whatever your level's at right at the moment.
So kind of touching on one more thing this evening is what are some, just for fun, like what are some exercises that you've seen like over the years or like certain exercises you think that may be a little underrated and underappreciated in people's programs? And just to annoy some people, what are some things that you think are overrated, overhyped?
Okay.
Your thoughts on certain exercises or trends or anything.
Underrated. I don't know if it's underrated or if they just suck so much that and people hate doing it so much that they just don't do it. Lunges, I think are super underrated with I hate doing lunges because they're so hard and there's so many variations that you can add to it to make it even harder. But just building off that, even any unilateral exercise for the most part, step ups, I started doing step ups a lot recently, and I think those are super underrated, especially if you do them from a height that's where the knee is going past the hip. So you're in a deep hip flexion kind of position. Those are very, very beneficial, I find. But yeah, any unilateral exercise for the most part, I think are underrated. Or people think they're too hard to do, so they shouldn't do them yet. Where I think the opposite way, because it is hard for you to do the unilateral exercise, I think you should be doing that before you even hop onto a barbell squat or whatever and do with both legs. Because if you can't do it, if you're not stable or can't do it properly with one leg, it's only going to cause more problems when you just skip over that and you just squat heavier loads and load up that dysfunction with both legs. So I think overrated wise, anything with the bar, thinking the big three is the one and only way to go. So squat, bench, deadlift, and then not using enough of the other prerequisite exercises that I think you should be doing in order to almost earn your way to using the barbell. Because I think the barbell is a skill. It is those three movements are a sport itself. So I wouldn't just throw someone in to start doing that right away. I'd have them do all these other prerequisite exercises first, in my opinion, anyways, before they get onto there.
Yeah, I know how you were saying lunges. I know when I've seen it on the Rock's Instagram when he throws on the chains and he just finishes it. He does 50 lunges and it's what the fuck is this guy doing? He's a monster. But he's just sweating crazy profusely. It's just man, that guy, nobody works harder than that man. Honestly,
no,
you look at all the stuff
not.
he's putting out, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, dude, that guy's at another level, and at the same time, he's killing it with acting on top of it. What the fuck? How are you acting in so many movies? Literally every single action movie I can think of right now has a Rock in it, and at the same time, this guy's still in the gym killing it.
He's $1 billion man, right? I heard a story. So remember, Pain and Gain?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when he was getting and he's huge for Pain and Gain, huge. And so the cardio he was doing was he had a 135-pound barbell on his back, and he was doing walking lunges around a 400-meter track.
Yeah,
that was cardio. And I'm
that's cardio. That's cardio.
What the fuck is that?
I do one set of that. I'm gonna be unconscious and can't walk for a week. I'm gonna need a wheelchair.
I'll just talking myself up to go on a run, a jog. This guy's doing lunges around the track. Yeah.
But who programs that? I want to know who sits there and writes this program out and goes, okay, this is what we're gonna do. Barbell, 135, round the track. Go.
I feel his programming, he literally just sits there and is what does everyone not like doing? Okay, how can we make that worse? And now when are we gonna do it? Tomorrow? Okay, let's do it.
Yeah, no, unbelievable. But hey, he's the $1 billion man for a reason, right? So.
He's the man.
He is the man. Well, listen, Miguel, I do want to thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. It's been a great conversation. I do want to ask you before you go, what's coming up for you? What are the plans for Miguel Strength? What's happening down the pipeline, or things you want to reveal or don't want to reveal? What's coming up?
Honestly, just from what I'm trying out, so even what we were talking about, getting more using the online platform more so for increasing the expansion of business or whatever else. So getting myself more involved with that, programming for people online. I got a couple programs that I've been working on. One of them specifically for females that I've been doing for the past bit now. Just getting that program out. other than that, like until competition comes up, like my athletes, I'm just trying to keep them healthy and like kind of keep them like ready as much as possible for when harder training does come up or when competitions do come up for the most part. But other than that, man, just sticking with that and just like I'm still trying to think of like, again, different ways and different ways to get content out there, because now it's like that's like the hardest part is like still, again, like with those basics, trying to get it out there in a way that's like a lot more digestible for people to kind of like look at more, I guess. But other than that, like that's pretty much it for me right now. Just chilling out in the garage for them in the meantime, just getting a little bit more equipment and toys if I find any online, and that's pretty much it, man.
If you can even find equipment right now, it's like,
oh dude,
triple the price. It's insane right now.
Trust.
Yeah, like that was the one thing is like people are like, okay, I'm going to start up a gym in my own garage. And it's like trying to find stuff, and then at like a decent price, it's like everything's like $4 a pound.
Yeah, no, 100%. Actually, if there is like another suggestion I can give, like in terms of like building your gym, one is probably even like not even looking at, like I know a lot of people want to like buy squat rack, but for like I think like 99% of people, like you don't even need the squat rack. Like I would rather just put that money in towards maybe getting, again, like maybe a decent set of kettlebells. If you do want to use the barbell, like I think the landmine is like a great tool to use.
I got that in my garage.
Awesome. That's what I got.
Yeah,
dude, that's literally my favorite thing to like throw people on. Like and like with training people in general, like I think again, like the best thing to do is just find exercises that are super easy, that you can do almost like instinctively right away after showing 1 or 2 times, and then from there getting a little bit more like specific with it. But yeah, like a landmine for the barbell, super good on space. And again, like very cost effective because you don't need the rack for it. Then adjustable dumbbells. And like, honestly, man, like that's pretty solid setup right there to get everything done.
Yeah, no, if you're again, like you said, it's all about creativity, right? If you can be creative, you don't need a full scale gym. You can make it very versatile, very functional, makes it work. And that's all you really need. And then you get a good person to put it together, and that's who you are, and that's how we're going to build it, right?
Yeah.
We forgot one key piece of equipment, the theme of the night, Bosu ball. Gotta have a your home garage gym. It's got to have a Bosu ball.
Excellent. Is there anybody you want to reach out to or thank or sponsors or anything like that before we take off?
Yeah, for the most part, just like everyone again that just supported like in here, like supported me on like everything that I've been doing. Again, like just shout out to like my coach Mosley for showing me, like for bringing me into jiu-jitsu, like and through there like connecting me through people like you guys. And in general, that's pretty that's it. That's pretty much it for everything. But yeah, I'd like to thank you guys for the opportunity to go ahead and talk on here too.
No, thank you again so much. We want to have you back on. Well, hopefully when we get out of here, we can head over to your garage and get a lift session in and show us how to do some stuff.
Yeah, I'll show you how weak I actually am when you see what weights are on those bumper plates.
Well, it's okay. 2 out of 3 people on this podcast actually lift, and I'll let you figure out who the one that doesn't actually lift is.
I'm the guy lifting, buddy. It's you who's not doing much. So
what do you mean? I'm like 225 now. was 190. I was 190 like in the summer. Now I'm like I'm packing on size. Going ultra heavyweight or bust.
Just bulking, man. That's it.